and help me give a warm welcome to our special guest presenter, Shana Baptiste-Iseyemi. Shana, welcome.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me for a second time. I'm so excited to be here. Welcome, everyone, to How to Ensure Your Child is Excelling in the French Immersion Program. My name is Shana Baptiste-Iseyemi. So let's get started with what I'm going to cover today. First and foremost, a little bit of introductions, and then we're going to jump right in to questions to ask your child's French teacher, followed by questions to ask your child. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about how to decode report cards in Ontario, next steps, and then we'll wrap up with some conclusions and open up the floor. This presentation should be about 15 minutes, and I'm excited to support you today. So just a little bit about me. I'm the creator and founder of Faire, sens. I act as the French as a second language consultant for parents, guardians, and caregivers. And when I'm not doing that, I'm actually a bilingual career advisor and educator by day. I used to be a French and careers teacher with about 10 years of experience supporting students of diverse learning and linguistic backgrounds. And I was so fortunate to teach in both the Toronto District School Board and the York Region District School Board. Now, how was I able to do all of that? Well, I actually have an honors bachelor's in French studies, and I also lived and studied abroad in Grenoble, France. I also have a bachelor's of education with a focus on French as a second language from OISE, also known as, I guess, UFT, if you will. And I took the time to do additional qualifications in guidance and career education, along with cooperative education. I also see something in the chat. Okay, there, someone was just asking. And lastly, I do have a career strategist service certification, pardon me, from the Career Professionals of Canada. So all that to say, I have come up with a couple of questions that I feel will better support you to have a meaningful conversation with your child's French teacher, especially now that report cards, the first provincial report card will be going home this month, depending on your school board. It'll come at different days, okay? Before I start, I do want to state that these questions should probably not be asked during the parent-teacher interview, as oftentimes you only get about 5 minutes really with the teacher just to understand what's going on. So I would recommend sending an email so that your child's teacher has time to read and respond accordingly, right? On that note, the first question: what diagnostic assessments did you use to assess my child at the beginning of the school year or term? Did they arrive at your class at the right grade level? Now, this is a two-part question, so I'll take the time to explain. Now, diagnostic assessments are also known as assessments for learning. That's what teachers will issue usually for the whole month of September or before the beginning of a unit, just to understand if your child what your child knows, okay? It can come in a variety of forms, such as quizzes, surveys. They might just have some discussions with the class, informal conversations. They might even just give your child a checklist, a KWL chart. So that's a chart where your child will say what I know, what I want to know, what I learned, if you will. And you'll see there's some other examples. So when you're asking this question, be prepared to know some examples that might come up. Okay. Now, the second part, did they arrive at your class at grade level, is very specific, and the teacher will know exactly what you're talking about, right? If your child is in grade 4, there's a specific curriculum expectations and overall expectations that the teacher will know they need to teach them, which means they should know already the grade 3 expectations and have achieved that. Nevertheless, we'll get into that later on, but this is the first question that will really start a great, fruitful conversation between you and your child's teacher. Number 2, which language strand would you say my child excels in? Reading, writing, speaking, and or listening. Now, this is very important because every subject has strands, but in particular, when we're talking about the French as a second language, we are responsible to assess your child on those 4 strands. So when you're asking, the teacher should be ready to go to say, actually, your child actually is a really good reader, but they are having some difficulty with writing, for example. So this is why I've put this question in there. And note that every provincial report card, or report cards in general, should include at least some of these strands in the comments, okay? And lastly, I would almost say, and more importantly, how is my child meeting the specific expectations of the curriculum? So we're going to go to the next slide so I can explain a little bit more about what I mean, okay? Now, on your right-hand side, you're going to see a sample of a print screen, if you will, of a specific strand. It's a speaking strand for grade 4, okay? Now, at the top, the first arrow is pointing to overall expectations. Technically, teachers are only required to teach to the overall curriculum expectations, meaning however they choose to assess and evaluate your child, they should be able to say that your child can B1, speak to communicate, B2, speak to interact, B3, and have some kind of intercultural understanding. These codes do not show up on the report card, but these are the overall expectations. And as long as they have evidence of that, technically their job is done. But that being said, the second arrow goes to specific expectations because these actually act as a guide, an additional guide for all educators when it comes to assessment and evaluation practices. So in order to say your child can speak to communicate, they actually are prompted with at least 6 to 8 suggestions on what to look for. So they can assess your child, for example, on B1.1 using oral communication strategies. A whole assessment can just be on that, or it can be part of the evaluation. Now, I really encourage you to have a look at this document, and we'll talk about this later on. But on the Ministry of Education website, it is available to see all curriculum documents for every subject, including French as a second language, for every single grade. So you can have an understanding of what your child should be able to accomplish. So again, how is my child meeting the specific expectations of the curriculum? Be prepared that they're then going to be able to and should be able to point out to these specifics for each strand. Thank you for the reaction. Now, I'd like to move on to questions to ask your child. It's very important, in my opinion, I just posted about it today, that, oh, we already have a hand, but I'm going to ask Monica, if you hold your question to the end, the presentation will be over shortly, and then I'll get to you. Okay, awesome. So not only should you be having a conversation with your child's teacher, I say French teacher, the teacher responsible for the language component, but also with your child, right? I know we're excited. We put our child in French immersion. We have the best intentions, right? But we also still want to check in. So here are some questions to ask them, especially now that report cards are going home. Number 1, what is your favorite subject being taught in French and why? Right? Just a reminder, folks, in the French Immersion program, at least 2 subjects must be selected from the following list in order for it to meet the minimum hours of French language instruction by the end of grade 8. Okay, so school boards all get to choose which subjects they want to choose from this list. So just letting you know it's not the same across the board. That being said, your child could be taking some of their subjects from the arts, okay, whether it's visual arts, music, drama, or even dance at times. Social studies, that's what it's called from grades 1 to 6. But when they go to grades 7 and 8, it's called history and geography. And then they also can teach, have your child do their math in French, science and technology, and health and physical education. But again, it depends on the school board. But nevertheless, what's their favorite subject and why? They should be able to tell you. A second question I've created is, what is your favorite French game or activity? Can you explain to me how it works? Now, the reason I put this question here, again, is just to check in to see how their experience is going, but also there are always games included in teaching, not just French. We've definitely have gone towards a direction of games, activities, interactive interactions so that children feel that they are enjoying their learning. So there has to be a game. And the reason I have, can you explain to me how it works, is because even if you don't speak French, right, your child's ability to tell you how to do the game in English means they've actually been able to switch from French when the teacher explained it and when they played to English to be able to explain to you how it works. And number 3, how often do your teachers speak in French? I would encourage you to prompt younger children if they're in grade. Some schools start junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten, traditionally grade 1, but nevertheless, right, if they're younger, you might just say, do your teachers speak French in the mornings, the afternoons, or all day? And again, this is not an attack on the teacher in any way, shape, or form, right? We're wanting to make sure that we're just understanding, because every school board is different. Every school within a school board is different, and even every classroom is different within a school, right? So you just want to understand what their days is looking like. I'd like to move on to decoding report cards in Ontario. Okay, I thought this was important to note. So I'd like to share with you that when looking at your child's progress report card, which is distributed in November, you would have already received that, or their provincial report card, which is coming out this month, and then again for report or term 2 in June. In addition to their other courses, don't forget to look at the French language mark don't forget to look at the French language mark, being that their success in French immersion depends on that. And what do I mean? It's again, the listening, speaking, reading, and writing, because that informs you with regards to how they're interacting with the language. When looking at your child's report cards again, subjects that are taught in French actually will have a checkbox beside the word French, which can be found under or beside the respective subject. I find that's really hard to understand by just showing it with words, so I'd love to explain that by looking at this slide. So when you get your child's report card this month, right, it'll look something like this. On the right-hand side, they'll have the subjects, and there's a bunch of boxes. This example is the progress report card. I apologize. It's the one that went home in November. Nevertheless, the boxes are the same. So let's take a note. There are other boxes like ESL and ELD. These are for students who are learning English as a second language, or who are in the English development program. Now, that could be if your child is learning or has learned like a dialect of English, right? And there just might be some gaps in their learning due to a variety of reasons. That being said, that box can be checked off and they still can be in French immersion. It just means that they're doing two things at the same time. There are no letter grades for this report card in elementary school, but again, if you'll notice there's an orange arrow, the word French is what it's pointing to. If your child is taking science and technology in French, that box would be checked off. The same would be said for any of the other subjects. Here is the provincial report card I was talking about, so I apologize for that mistake previously, but this is what it'll look like when it goes home this month, because the provincial report card has two boxes. As you can see, those two columns, one is for report 1, which is this month, and the second column is for report 2 in June. So your child will actually get a mark for the first and second term, and the IEP box is actually something you should note as well. If your child has an individual education plan on file, also known as an IEP, whether they have modifications or in place, okay, modifications or accommodations in place, if they have modifications, the box will be checked off. If they don't, then it's just an accommodation. The box will not be selected, okay? Now, I do want to clarify something here. If your child has a modification that is outlined in their individual education plan, which means they have undergone a psychoeducational assessment, their teacher, social worker, potentially admin, everyone has had a conversation, you've been brought into the meeting and you've actually signed off on this document, that they should have in the IEP and clearly state what grade level your child's operating in. So if your child is in grade 6 and they're in French immersion, but they have an IEP that is modified, again, the box will be checked off on their report card and the French box for respective subject, but the IEP should state what grade level they're actually at. They might be at 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, if that's the case, there will also be a modifier in the comment in on the right-hand side that says this comment is actually based on modifications. I can talk a bit more about that in the Q&A. I just want to make sure you understand the difference between accommodations and modifications. And regardless, your child can be in French immersion if they have either or. So some possible next steps. I encourage you to stay connected with me. Follow me on social media. You'll get a sample, or excuse me, you'll get a copy of these slides. Everything's hyperlinked. So click what works for you. Okay. But I definitely want to make sure that I conclude in saying that the French Immersion program is a great opportunity with many advantages, right? However, it's extremely important to reevaluate your child's situation every year when in elementary school, especially after grade 4, as the program becomes more intense. Depending on your school board, the traditional model, if you will, that is when the English language is introduced. But again, every school board is different. But more importantly, for additional support, I strongly encourage you to check out the resource section on our website. I've divided it into free resources, paid resources. There's a list of French camps in the GTA. We also have some local tutors that are recommended there, and even the Explore program that's funded by the government. Nevertheless, I really want to support all of you today, so I'd love to get to the Q&A portion of the presentation. And it's right on time, 7:19 p.m. I hope that was clear, Stephanie.
That was
Oh, thank
fantastic.
you.
Thank you
Oh,
so
thank you.
much. Oh, I see a lot of hearts. There you go.
Oh,
Lots of
thank
thumbs
you.
up as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, thank you to everyone who is joining in this evening, but who also had submitted some questions for our speaker, Shana. So maybe we'll
Yes.
start with those. And I see that there
Yes.
is also more questions building in the chat. So again, thank you,
Perfect.
everyone. So I'll pass it on to you again, Shana, because
Of
I know
course.
you have the questions that were submitted.
I do. I
And we'll-
have 4 questions, and then I remember, I think I said Monica, and I see Christina. So I will do those, address those questions, and then the chat. So first things first, I received a question. I don't know who asked, so I apologize in advance, but I'll read the question out loud. So transitioning from English classes to French middle immersion for 4th grade, how does it work? What can I do to ease the transition for my child? So just to clarify, this person wants to know how to support their child who is going to be going from all English to what is called the Middle French Immersion program that starts in grade 4. So logistically, depending on the school board, their classes are actually now going to be 100% in French for the first few years. But I want to state that in the Toronto District School Board, they follow the model that grades 4 and 5 are 100%, and then it gets reduced to 75% from grades 6 to 8. So it's the English language arts subject, so the English subject, and science are taught in English. So I hope that's clear, that to transition, they start off in an intense French environment with all French, and then they scaffold it, okay? Now, my services only focus on the GTA, but I did want to share that if there's any folks on the call who are in the Ottawa region, I was just there, by the way, for a conference. I wanted to share that the Ottawa Carleton District School Board has a similar setup for their French. It's called Middle French Immersion, where from grades 4 to 6, all subjects are taught in French except the English class and their math, okay? So for them, they follow a 66% model, and then it drops to 50% for grades 7 to 8. I hope that makes sense, but again, for folks on the call who might not know the difference, early French immersion or French immersion is the traditional model that started in grade 1, but some folks have started it now. School boards, senior kindergarten and junior, and middle French immersion is a late entry starting in grade 4. Now, to prepare, I just talked about logistics. To answer the question, how do you transition? In theory, it's not required to prepare your child for French immersion, whether it be the traditional early model, middle that we speak of, or the late immersion that still exists in certain school boards. That being said, since middle immersion starts in grade 4, I strongly encourage you to just have a conversation with your child. They're usually about 7 or 8 years old by now, if they're in grade 3. So it might be worth just having a chat about the upcoming transition. So I've come up with a few questions that you can ask them. So are you excited to start middle French immersion in September? Why or why not, right? They'll tell you, right? Also, what are you most worried about and why? And lastly, are you open to reviewing a bit of French before you start as a way to prepare? And, I'll let you go from there, but these questions will allow you to gauge their interest before they start. And it also allows you to just check in and look for resources and support them over the summer. I hope that makes sense. That being said, don't overdo it. We don't want to discourage your child. Again, they don't need to prep before they start this transition. All right, number two. Number two asks, I would appreciate if you can share some advice on how to motivate speaking up ideas for early French immersion kids. Thank you for your kind support. So I think this person is asking for some tips to encourage their child to just speak more in class. So first and foremost, do not forget to regularly communicate with your child's French teacher, as they're the one that actually will be assessing their listening, speaking, reading, and writing. And at this time, they should have an idea as to where your child's at, the pain points, what they can be concerned, what they might be concerned about. And they will also have some recommendations for you, okay? That being said, at school, they usually expect your child to be comfortable with using the language a little bit closer to the end of the first year. And then by the second year, they should see some clear progress being made. So I don't know how old your child is for this person, but I do want you to keep that in mind. When it comes to supporting them, have your child watch age-appropriate cartoons or shows in French, whether it's on Netflix, YouTube, or some sort of similar platform with supervision. And I encourage you to put subtitles in French. This is really important because if it's still early days, they might not know what's going on, but the subtitles, right? It will help them to actually read simultaneously or just focus on the reading before they start to get used to what they're hearing. And finally, as a reminder, I've got the resource page, French language support, and I actually tell you in brackets what all of those resources are for. So I hope that makes sense. Oh, I had one more other tip. Did you know that your local public library tends to have a lot of French support? I actually, for folks in Vaughan Public Libraries have 3 French program facilitators on staff, and they're constantly running programming. So I do want to plug in all of our libraries in Ontario. They're doing some great work. So I would also encourage you to tap into their resources along with the CPF virtual programming that already exists. I have 2 more, but this one I think is a repetition. I have one about any tips to help quiet kids, speak in French. Can they do well in French immersion? It's similar to what I had just said, but just to share with you that listening and speaking go hand in hand. So if your child's quiet at the beginning, it doesn't mean they're not understanding, because you tend to have to listen for comprehension before you're confident to speak. And the same thing could be said for reading and writing. They go hand in hand. They might not know how to write just yet, but they can read really well, or vice versa. But I would use the same tips that I just provided with my previous answer. And lastly, before we take the live questions, this person is wondering about advice on transitioning to middle school and preparing for the new expectations. I would assume middle school for this person is grade 8 or even grade 7, actually, middle school, grade 7. Some schools go grade kindergarten to grade 6, and then they move on. This really ties into the expectations in the curriculum that I mentioned, but I will tell you that report cards change from grades 1 to 6. Teachers are using letter grades, okay, along with the achievement levels, but from grade 7 to 12, it moves to percentage. Now, I know that doesn't prepare the student, but it actually might prepare you and also allow you to prepare your child. But the curriculum is definitely it slightly progresses. To transition them is really just to keep doing the great work and to connect with the teacher. If they're changing schools, I would talk to their teacher before that change, because they, in this report card and in June and in person or by email, will definitely tell you exactly your child's strengths and weaknesses and provide you with recommendations. And again, I also have those resources for you. So we can take some time at the end to show that if we have time. But middle school transition, even without French immersion, is just going to be tricky. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. I hope that makes sense. So I know I had some raised hands, Stephanie, and I did want to honor them, but I'll
Yes,
let you do
I
that.
don't see the raised hand. Maybe
Okay.
you can
There,
comment,
there,
but we do.
there
Go
is
ahead.
one. Yeah, there is
Okay.
one. Yeah, Christina. Did you?
Okay.
Yeah, I can allow her to talk and then she can speak.
Oh, even better. Here, I'm going to take notes, Christina. Is she there?
She's joining.
Oh, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi,
Hi.
ladies. How are you? Thank you so
I'm
much for your time today and all your support and fantastic resources. I
thank
joined
you.
a bit late. I was
Okay.
just having trouble with my tech, of course. But my question is, I'm wondering about the core, extended, and French immersion. I'm not sure if this still applies or if it's just if it applies to high school, middle school, or elementary, but or maybe I'm just confused, but if you can kindly clarify what these levels are and
Sure.
if they're incorporated in elementary and it's just under one umbrella for immersion, just some
Sure.
clarification would be helpful.
Oh,
Thank you
for
so
sure.
much.
You're so welcome. This is actually one of the main reasons why I created Faire, because I wanted to explain the different FSL options in our province. So thank you for that. So core French traditionally starts in grade 4, and a student no longer has to take it after grade 9. They have to complete a minimum of 800 hours by the end of grade 8 and do their credit in high school to count towards their 30 credits for graduation. That is core French. However, there are a lot of school boards who actually rolled out core French and roll it out now as early as grade 1, but it really depends on the school board and as you can imagine, the availability of teachers to do so. Extended French, however, is typically introduced in grade 5. It is a concept of a 50-50 model where it's 50% English, 50% French. And by the end of grade 8, they should actually have a minimum hours of 1,260 hours as per the Ministry of Ed. Core French, if I take a step back, can also go all the way to grade 12. That's available, but it depends on the high school and if they have enough sections to offer it. So just to clarify, I apologize for stepping back. It's mandatory in grade 9 for grade 9 core French. After that is an elective. Okay, so if students choose it, then they have enough sections, they'll run it. Extended French, as I had said, by the end of grade 8, you'll notice the hours double. Okay, if you will, and they are allowed to take that till the end of grade 12 as well, dependent on the high school and the availabilities for the sections. And lastly, immersion is what traditionally was offered in grade 1, and by the end of grade 8, it's 3,800 hours minimum. School boards can offer more hours, but they have to meet the minimum. And then after middle school, a child can take that all the way to grade 12. There are 10 credits that have to be taken in French immersion in high school in order for them to get their certificate of bilingualism. You can also get a certificate of bilingualism in grade for extended French as well. So I feel like I spoke too quickly and mixed it up a bit, but there's literally a specific requirements for each one by hours, and your child can do that all the way to grade 12 if available.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Does that make sense, Christina?
Yes, am I still unmuted?
You are unmuted. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, okay. Yes. No, I
Yes.
wasn't sure if I was muted again. Yes. No, that's
No worries.
so it's all based on hours. So my understanding is it's all based on hours and it's also based on the school board that the child attends.
The availability of it. Yes.
The availability for for teachers uh and then immersion and extended, you can get a certification for both, like either or, right? Depending on how many hours And
Depending on what your child's enrolled in. You can't mix and match.
Okay.
Your child's either registered in extended French and continues through that, right? Or they're registered in French immersion and continue through that. But if they go from a French immersion at elementary school and then the high school they switch to doesn't have French immersion, maybe you've changed cities, changed school boards, and they only have extended French, your child's able to take that. If they don't have either, then they have to go down to core French. But you have to be in a pathway. It goes by hours based on what they're in.
Okay, so if they start in grade 1 immersion, then that, depending on what they end up in for a middle or a high school, that can change to either extended or core, right?
Depending on the availability by secondary school. Yes.
Right. Okay.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Christina. And I do know, I always do this. I say 800 hours by the end of grade 8 for core, and I always do that. It's 600. It's 600
600.
hours.
Okay.
Yeah, so because it doubles, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense. So I apologize for that
No
error,
problem.
but you can see the difference because lastly, core French is one subject in French. Literally, it's just the French class. That's where they're learning to listen, speak, read, and write. That is all they do from grade 4 to grade 9 or 12 if they choose to continue. Extended French and French immersion is when they get to choose, the school board chooses from those lists, that list of subjects that I talked about, and they do other subjects in French.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for your question.
Thank you for your reply.
No problem. Stephanie, I know there was a person by the name of Monica with the raised hand, but I don't know if they're there anymore. Otherwise, we can definitely go to the chat.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions that ties in with exactly what you just started to explain in terms of the differences between the different level, if I may say, core, extended, and French immersion. And there is a parent, Tatiana, who's asking about, are students considered fluent after graduation from an FI school program? So I think it touches a little bit, and you did mention it about certification. So can you, and at the beginning of the presentation, you talk about testing. So I think that if you could briefly just explain what is this certification that at the end of a program a student can obtain?
Perfect. So there's actually, so it's a bilingual certificate. So everyone gets an OSSD, Ontario Secondary School Diploma, but it becomes the additional bilingual pieces if they can actually pass the DELF assessment at the end. Now, DELF is, it's an assessment of the language, and essentially it's in different levels, A1, A2, B1, and it goes to B2 at least for secondary students. It's all based on the Common European Framework of reference for languages. Very long, but it's CEFR. So at the end of the day, by the end of grade 12, if your child's in French immersion, the goal is for them to be at B2. And it kind of scaffolds and goes backwards for extended French, core French. Nevertheless, every school board allows your child to register for that test and do that test. And if they pass that test, then they get that level. That's the certification that I'm talking about. It marks bilingualism, if you will.
And some school boards also certify the students at the grade 8 level. Am I right?
Oh, that would be news to me. But I don't see any issue with it, right? Because the level changes. From my assessments that I do at my business, I've done quite a few, and people stay in A1 for quite a bit of time. It's just benchmarks. I've converted them into the curriculum, and for the most part, junior kindergarten to about grade 3, A1, grade 4 to about grade 8, A2, grade 9, 10. I'm only talking about French immersion. B1, grade 11, grade 12, B2. But again, very, very dependent on your child's experience throughout the French immersion program. But I've definitely seen enough to see that's pretty much where it sits, which is why they've got these levels, and your child can sign up for what makes sense for them. So yeah, I can see an A2 for grade 8. That makes sense to me. I saw a raised hand, but I know there are comments. So I want to, sorry, the questions in the comments. I hope that answers that person's question. So many. Okay. Oh, you're on mute, Stephanie. En fait, je ne peux pas vous
Shoot.
entendre. It's okay.
The additional comment was about, again, the difference between extended French and French immersion. I think you've mentioned it.
Okay.
But if you could, again, clarify the difference between extended French and French immersion.
Sure. Absolutely. I think I kind of gobbled it up, so I can do it again. So on that note, our base is our core French, and you do not have to sign your child up for that. It's mandatory for them to start in grade 4. If you don't want them to start in grade 4 and you want a more immersive program, you have extended French and French immersion. Extended French typically starts in grade 5. You must register your child. And by the end of grade 8, they would have done 1,260 hours minimum of French language instruction, which means they take their French subject, it's called just French as a second language, where they do listening, speaking, reading, and writing. That's one subject. But then they are mandated, if extended French, to choose at least one other subject in French. Most boards do more than one, but they must choose one. And that could be from the arts, that could be from social studies, that could be from history, geography, that could be from math, science, technology, or physical and health and physical education, okay? If they're in French immersion, again, they're taking the French class, the subject, but then the board must choose at least 2 of those subjects to be delivered in French. By the end of grade 8, your child would have done 3,800 hours minimum. Every board can decide how many hours. They can go more than that above, but they can't go under. And traditionally, it starts in grade 1, but some boards are now doing senior kindergarten, definitely junior kindergarten, TDSB, and some have actually taken a step back and do it in grade 2, but they all still have to meet the minimum hours of instruction. Hope it makes sense.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay.
Now I have a question from Tanesia about list of resources for French tutor homework clubs may be helpful for grade 5-6 student success in particular.
Okay. List of resources. If you just give me a moment, because this is, oh, of course it's French immersion. That's a silly question. It's because I've never had extended French. I'm actually really happy about that, because I'm definitely always trying to promote and explain the differences. The reason I'm taking a moment is because I've read the curriculum cover to cover from grade 1 to grade 12 and mapped it out for core, extended, and immersion for all grammar concepts. So if you just give me a second, because I have my resources, but for that specific grade, I wanted to just quickly have a look at where your child should be in theory when it comes to French immersion. By then, okay, yes, future tense and a bunch of, yeah, A2. Okay, so for grade 5 to 6, I can give an answer, but is this specifically for listening? Is it for speaking? Is it for reading? Is it for writing? Because I want to stress that if your child is struggling, we don't just want to get a tutor, right? We want to make sure we're supporting them for the strand. The tutor might be able to do a diagnostic for you, but we want to work with the report cards and all the hard work that your child's French teacher and teachers have provided, right? So on that note, grade 5 to 6, they should be doing present tense, past tense, which is past tense, composé, imperative. They should be able to do some future tense. So if you need support for grade 5, 6, I would just need a little bit more info, maybe an email afterwards, because I don't know exactly what they need, if that makes sense, but that grade is A2, that range, okay? I hope that makes sense. Again, the resources, you're gonna get the slide, it's embedded, and it just goes to the page and it's all hyperlinked. There's videos for French culture. Comme une Française, very good YouTube channel. French lady literally teaches cultural concepts. So the grade 5, 6 question, right? It could be speaking, but it could be cultural interaction. There's so many ways that, I could answer that question, but I hope that makes sense. There's so many questions. I can't
I know.
keep up.
Yeah, and Tanesia confirmed that her son is in grade 3, I believe. Or switch in grade 3 is now in French immersion.
Oh, grade 3. For some reason, I heard grade 5, 6.
Yeah, me too.
Oh,
but he
okay.
switched in grade 3, but he's in grade 5, 6 indeed. But he switched from an all-French Montessori public immersion school.
Okay, so hold on.
And the strands were reading and speaking.
Got it, got it. So went from all French Montessori. Give me a second. From grade 3 and now all French Montessori grade
So,
3 to
right.
French. Yeah, that's a different scenario. But uh, I I definitely feel as a Tunisia, an email, please, because I also have my matrix. I'm sorry, I'm on my phone because I just want to clarify that French first Francophone school boards where everything is French, everything, communications that go home to parents, announcements, instructions on the floor, on the wall, everything's in French. They introduce English in grade 4. So if your child went from an all French setting, including like a Montessori with that concept, that's a different curriculum. Montessori won't necessarily use the Ontario French curriculum, but I'm just saying French first school boards use a completely different curriculum document for French. But I have matrixed that and I know what the levels are in theory, but it's just very different. So going from that to French immersion is actually from like going from like super advanced to advanced. So I'd love to support you if you still need that later on. Different situation.
Thank you, Shana. I have another question about from Carla. Son has been in French immersion since JK and in first grade now, new school, and the teacher has recommended that he is moved to the English since he's having problems speaking and reading. In the context, his main language is English at home, and they speak to him in Spanish. Could it be that having 3 languages is making it difficult for him? Very interesting question.
That
Thank you,
is,
Carla.
speaks Spanish at home.
So it seems very young as well.
Yes, so recommend, sorry, I'm just writing this down, English track. So many moving parts. It's 2025. That's been 3 years, roughly 2022, tail end pandemic. Without knowing exactly like how much French exposure your child has had during the day, right? With that really tricky transition we all had to go through. I always say it takes about 2 years for your child to just get comfortable with this change. It's a change. Like French immersion is intense. I won't mince words, but that's the point, right? We want bilingual students. So that being said, without having a little bit more, I couldn't say just going to English right away. Having another language may hinder, but it may not. Every child is different because certain languages, if they're from the same Latin group, have similar sounds, conjugations and endings. So it definitely would have to be even just like an informal convo with your child to see what's going on, or even just having a look at the report cards, because report cards tell everything. So I wouldn't just say it's the Spanish right off the bat. Sometimes that helps. And I didn't hear, was it just the speaking, Stephanie? She said, sorry, I didn't read it.
The speaking and the reading, but
Oh, yes.
again, the child is in grade 1.
Right.
So
JKSK1.
that is very early,
It
the
is.
language acquisition, and the child is learning 3 languages.
That's right.
Just
That's right.
fabulous.
That's right. And that's why I say I don't even assess children unless they've been in the program for 2 years. It's too early. Grade 1 is the 3rd year. I would wait for that report card, right? Again, every school board is different. I'd wait for that report card, and I'd definitely have a look at the French mark. I know you're saying speaking and reading now, but have a look at that mark and then look at the other subjects taught in French, because it's one thing if it's just speaking and reading, which are important, because that will inform their ability to understand and interact in all their other subjects. But again, I'm not willing to say, oh, because it's the Spanish, right? There's more digging there. If you'd like to send an email, I'd love to support. But again, you're going to get the slides and you're going to get the resources, because, for example, Bookly is an app. It literally is just French books, and you can have the feature like select read aloud, and it'll just read to your child. Sometimes they just don't have enough practice in class, or they're not comfortable. So you'd be surprised, right? Just to even see what they can do at home when you have this, like the resources to do so. So I hope that answers. I know it's a little not specific because there's too many moving parts, but speaking and reading, all strands are important, but there are resources to support. Again, you can, I can put it in the chat.
I like that you
now.
mentioned Bookily as well, because it's such just a wonderful free
amazing.
resources for parents. produced by
Amazing.
TFO.
Oh, I love it. I have it on my phone. Story for another day. I have to get going with my daughter, but even right now we're just watching Choupier Doudou. She just thinks it's about a teddy bear. So, I support it, right? It's hearing. It's the ability to hear.
All right.
Okay.
Mary, I don't see any more questions or raise hands. Do you?
Nope.
I think we've
Okay.
reached the end of our wonderful time together. Again, Shana, thank you so very much for sharing and your expertise and
Oh, thank
so much
you.
information. My head is spinning, if I may say, but in a good way. And I hope that
Thank you
everyone,
so much.
I can see a lot of hearts and bravo as well.
Oh, thank
Uh,
you. I think a
Find this
question
time
might have
valuable.
just came
Again,
in.
we will be sending you the slides. We will be sending you a brief survey as well and some
Oh,
more
thank you.
links on resources. You can always go on our Canadian Parents for French Ontario website, which is on.cpf.ca. But we will communicate with you in the next couple of days with all this wonderful information again. So thank you,
Awesome.
everyone.
You're very welcome, everyone. There was a question that just came through by Jane or a comment. Maybe it's
Oh,
just a comment, but also to Carla, I think she just let us know that there's a meeting in place for Friday. Carla, I wish you all the best for that meeting for your child on Friday, because that's a great approach. Sometimes language, if it could be an issue with just like their actual tongue and their ability to speak, regardless of lots of questions are coming now or comments. Am I able to speak to it, Stephanie? Because there was another one
absolutely.
there
Yes,
by,
we still have a bit of time.
oh, yes, sorry. Jane says, thank you for the Zoom meeting. You're so welcome. My daughter is having difficulty in reading and writing. She is in grade 4 French immersion. The teacher says she understands 100% and her speaking is excellent, but she is having issues with reading. So yes, I love that everyone's being so specific because that means they've been having conversations with their teachers. I'm very excited about that because again, strands are very important versus just the overall language. I'd be excited for you to have a look at those resources on the website because if it's reading, right, then there's different avenues. We definitely need you to get on the app if you don't have it, just for the read aloud practice. We definitely want to encourage going to the library to take out some books in French if you have that access to do so. And also just, again, there's other resources there. And sometimes if we know it's reading, then maybe we need to connect with a tutor specifically for reading. And I know exactly one who does literally reading comprehension. So if you'd like to connect with me or just go right on the resource page, I'd be happy to refer you. Oh, you're so welcome, everyone. I think I missed something. Oh, I think that was it. I scrolled too far up. So if nobody else, you're very welcome. If nobody else has any questions, what I could do for the recording piece, I know I'm a visual learner, I can just click the resource page, Stephanie, and just show folks what that looks like, the same one with French language support, if you'd like.
That would be wonderful.
Okay, just in case, because somebody had asked a question that I think got lost in the chat. How do you support summer learning? And I would say French summer camp. So I'll give you a moment. If you give me a moment, rather, let's give it a click.
And I'll mention as well that Canadian Parents for French, many of you may already know, offers virtual tutoring programs for students from grade 1 all the way up to grade 12. Even some young leadership program and reading buddies, and it's all done through Play. Brilliant.
And you're on the list for sure. Oh, that's what it was. Stephanie, we actually have questions in the Q&A section of our webinar. That's where I saw it. So we have a bunch of questions I did not answer there. So before I go into the French language support, sorry, Aisha, that's where I saw it. How would you keep the momentum going through the summer? I am so sorry, Aisha. I knew I saw it. Actually, I'm in the right place because I would encourage you to have a look at the French Camp Experience section of the resource page. I've organized it by my service areas, like within the GTA, and who you could connect with. Anonymous says, are there apps, programs, or websites that are recommended to assist our students, especially with JK to grade 3? The answer is yes. If I scroll up, right, we've got free resources here. Now, Zone des Petits is for little children. Zone Jeunesse is a little bit older. So that's a starting point. But there's so much here. I don't want to pinpoint and tell you where to go. But you definitely, I've explained in brackets, what could be helpful. Okay. Oh, perfect. They're clicking that they've answered. Okay. There was another one in the chat or the Q&A. I have a child in TDSB and SK going to grade 1. And I, as a parent, do not speak French. I want to support my child's learning. What suggestions do you have for me as a mom for reading, writing, and understanding? The teachers speak 80 to 90%. Okay, perfect. SK to grade 1. TDSB, depending on the year, they would have started in junior kindergarten. That being said, reading, writing, and understanding. So I'm just going to minimize. I just want to encourage folks or show folks. I don't want to encourage. It's up to you. There are some great workbooks that you could get for your child that are for French, period. Core French, Extended French, or French Immersion. I do not get any sponsorship for anything on this page. I've found them and from other people who've collaborated with me. So here, for Core French workbooks, don't be discouraged because it says Core French. If your child just started French Immersion, they can use the Complete French Smart for grades 4 to 8 because it's very general, like it's the beginning. And to her point, because reading and writing goes hand in hand. So they really sometimes just need to focus on the grammar. So that's where these booklets come in. Programme Canadien is specifically for French Immersion, but unfortunately it only goes to grade 3, okay? But I do want to encourage you to have a look at that. There is math specific. You did not mention that. But then don't forget flashcards. Happy has quite a few resources, books, flashcards, and puzzles. Even if you don't learn the language, you can learn along with your child, okay? And Facile à Lire has some great books. This one, if I'm not mistaken, is from Quebec. Very good level readers. So I hope that answers those Q&A questions specific to reading and writing. Remember, they go hand in hand, reading and writing. Understanding is listening comprehension, okay? So that would be tied to watching things. And that's why you want to put French subtitles. Like I promise you, they might not know what's going on, but if it's age appropriate, right, we don't want it to be too advanced. They can follow along with the writing at first, right? What else? That was pretty much it. I was just showing you that, folks looking for tutors, it's there. And those who want to learn French with their child, we've got lovely 1, 2, 3 Petits Pas. She's in Ottawa. She literally took French Immersion and only speaks to her child in French and has built a whole platform for ages 0 to 9 to support parents who don't speak the language. Don't forget Explore. If your child is going to be age 13 soon and up, the government of Canada will pay for them to do immersive programming over the summer. It could be here locally or it could be in other provinces. Just click the link. All you have to do is pay for transportation. I wish I took advantage of this, but my mom would not let. So I just wanted to remind you that these are on the website and you'll get the slides. I'll stop sharing that just because that is not the main piece, right? I hope that answers all the questions.
I think so. And again, thank you so much.
No problem. Oh, thank you,
Shana.
everyone.
And just for everyone as well to know that in terms of resources, we are welcoming at the end of the month on February 26, Let's Talk Science, Parlons Science, who will, again, be able to share excellent free resources for parents to support their children and youth in the STEM studies.
Ooh.
And you did touch on that as well, Shana.
Yes, STEM. We want to make sure everyone feels supported. And so I'm trying to respond to, I think it's UK area in the chat, just because I'm not sure which link.
Link to the website again.
Oh, for the resources.
We will be sending them.
Yes.
Okay, great.
I want to make sure it's packaged in the slides so you don't get lost, and Stephanie will definitely get you that. Yes. Thank you so much for having me.
I think this is a wrap. Yes.
I think so. Thank you so much for having me. I hope this was of value to the folks on the call and those who couldn't have joined us today.
Be well, everyone. Thank you again, and enjoy the rest of your evening.